Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of the coverage tonight. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Also happens to be the location of tomorrow's Starlink launch, lifting off from Pad 39A, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Right now, you're taking a look at the heart of Pad 40, Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where we are currently T-minus 58 minutes, 10 seconds and counting from the launch of that Falcon 9 rocket you see, which will send up 23 more Starlink satellites on SpaceX's Starlink Group 6-62 mission. Tonight's flight is set to be the 37th dedicated Starlink flight of the year. It will bring SpaceX's total number of Starlinks launched in 2024 up to 834 on the year. We are joined by the usual gang tonight for our live launch coverage. Our editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Photographer Adam Bernstein is out in the field, manning our tracking camera, preparing to follow the rocket as it leaves the pad. Our Michael Caine has the evening off. But if you'd like to follow both of these gentlemen on their social channels, you can find them over at X, formerly Twitter. Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC, Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr. And while you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads and Facebook. So if you're not on X, you can go ahead and follow our coverage over on those social channels. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 10:35 p.m. tonight, 02:35 UTC. As we're getting things going, I want to thank the nearly 2,000 of you that are joining with us live as we're kicking things off tonight. For those of you who are coming back from a very, very early launch of the NROL 146 mission, welcome back. We're glad to have you with us once more for the second launch of the day for SpaceX and for us, of course. In order to help spread this live coverage, allow some more folks to find their way in, be sure to hit the like button if you haven't already and share the stream. And if you're not already subscribed to Spaceflight Now, now's a great time to do so. As you may have noticed with our latest post on social media and a web article that just went up in the last 10 or so minutes, United Launch Alliance, NASA, and Boeing are now currently targeting no earlier than June 1st for the next launch attempt of the Starliner spacecraft atop a ULA Atlas V rocket. You may say, June 1st, when does that sound familiar? Well, that is also potentially, I'm going to throw a giant asterisk on this one, potentially also the launch date of SpaceX's Starship rocket down in southern Texas. So it is gearing up to be a very, very busy start to the summer months for us. We'll, of course, have lots of coverage leading up to both of these marquee launches. So now is a good time to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on notifications so you'll be alerted whenever we do post new videos, begin our live streams. Also want to thank a very wonderful channel member community that we have here on YouTube, backed by our wonderful moderators, folks like Stephanie B. and Callistia Lee. And I'm not seeing them at the moment, but thanks also as well to Astro Joe, Astro Jen, and Rusty Shackelford for the work that y'all do in helping to support the live chat here. And thanks to channel members, folks like Butterfly, Esley Washington, Paz Maria H., Space Pony Marty Baldwin, Gomez 15, and many others, Zephyr Wolf, Josh King. Hello to you both. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all of our liftoffs from the Cape in 4K. Also want to thank a couple of folks in particular as we're getting things going tonight. Thanks to moderator and channel member Callistia Lee for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, and apparently it is the season for giving tonight. In addition to Callistia, we also have channel member Artemis who gifted 50 Spaceflight Now memberships, and then another 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. So big thanks to the both of you for all that generosity, and to our newest 80 our newest 80 channel members. Welcome aboard. We're very glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia and Artemis in the live chat. And we hope you stick around. I also want to thank Artemis for a very generous $100 super chat. Really appreciate that level of support, Artemis. Good to see you again tonight. Really appreciate your support of all we do here at Spaceflight Now. And to old Joe with a $10 super chat as well. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. As you've seen, the YouTube super chat is another way. If you have a comment or question that you'd like read on our show, and it's appropriate to be read on our show, I'd love to bring you into the conversation talking about this mission or some of the other activities going on in the world of space news. Taking a look back at the live chat here, I want to thank Space Pony for $2 super chat, as well as being a channel member. Really appreciate that. Asking if any of our cameras got hooded today. And for those who may have missed this, the Department of Transportation there in Texas has been putting some plastic bags over some of the cameras that have been live streaming along the right of way along, I believe it's State Road 4, which cuts through the heart of Starbase and leads out to Boca Chica Beach. Our streaming partner for the Starship missions, Lab Padre. His cameras have not been covered. However, he did get a 48-hour removal notice, as has been the case with a number of different channels. So, we are unfortunately not exempt in all of this, but rest assured we will still have robust coverage of the fourth integrated flight test of the Starship launch vehicle coming up potentially as soon as June 1st. So keep your eyes peeled and here on this channel, and we'll update you as we go along. Speaking of going along, we are now T minus 49 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting away from the launch of the rocket you see here on your screen, the Falcon 9 supporting the Starlink 6-62 mission. In about 11 and a half minutes, the SpaceX launch director will give their go or take the poll on the start of prop load. And if that go ahead is given, they'll begin fueling at about T minus 35 minutes. SpaceX is running the countdown for tonight's launch operations from its Hangar X site here at Kennedy Space Center. It's the facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights. SpaceX also has support for this launch in part the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, tonight's launch is targeting a T0 liftoff at 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC. If for whatever reason SpaceX is not ready to go at 10:35 and they have not started fueling, they do have multiple backup opportunities within tonight's launch window, which lasts until 2:31 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. And if none of that pans out, SpaceX also has a backup launch window that opens up at 10:06 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. That would, however, overlap somewhat with their launch of the Starlink 6-63 mission, expected to lift off from Launch Complex 39A. Weather looking pretty good for tonight's launch attempt as we take a look out at a shot of the moon, thanks to our friend Chuck Briggs, who is also going to be, of course, providing some launch tracking coverage tonight. Appreciate that shot, Chuck. 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 95% odds of favorable weather for liftoff during tonight's window. The only potential concern was the cumulus cloud roll, which is a fairly standard thing to see on just about every launch forecast, although cloud cover is really not much of an issue tonight. If for whatever reason SpaceX needs to pivot to their backup launch opportunity tomorrow, though, weather is a launch or a wash, rinse, repeat situation. Also 95% favorable in a 24-hour backup scenario. Currently T minus 46 minutes on the dot. As we come up on that pole to start a prop load, we'll note that the Brevard County Emergency Management Office and their Emergency Operations Center has activated in support of tonight's launch opportunities. Fun fact, the EOC here on Florida Space Coast, one of the busiest in the country because it activates for every launch attempt as well as every fueling operation that happens here at the Cape. And as you more than likely noticed, the frequency of launch opportunities and static fire tests and the like has become much more frequent these days. So they are quite busy. And in fact, if you're in the Central Florida area and you're not busy on June 1st, which it seems like we very much will be, but if you have some time off, I believe on the 1st and the 2nd, the EOC is having an open house. So you can go ahead and check out their new facility and see how they support not only launch opportunities here at the Cape, but also are standing by in support of response to natural disasters like hurricanes and severe thunderstorms and the like, and all the goodies that we have here in Central Florida. Talking about that launch countdown timeline, though, let's go ahead and step through that as we're awaiting the start of prop load here. As mentioned, it starts with the poll being taken at the T minus 38-minute mark. If the go ahead is given, things get off to the races at T minus 35 minutes. The loading of RP1 or rocket grade kerosene on both the first and the second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen is also loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. The T minus 16 minutes, second stage LOX load begins. But before that happens, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back. Happens as the feed lines are being chilled. Comes about at roughly T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. At T minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, and it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full, I should say. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, it'll be the start of the strong back retract sequence. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up. And then at about T minus 3 minutes and 50 seconds, give or take, the strong back or the transporter erector will start reclining. Here in Florida, the TE pulls back about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, they'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. At T minus 2 minutes, the second stage LOX tank should be topped off, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. At again 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC, or in other words, in 42 minutes. Currently T minus 39 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. We're just about a minute or so away from the start, or from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load for the Falcon 9 rocket. Taking a look at the live chat real quick, want to thank a few more folks for their support tonight. Thanks to channel member Josh King for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate that, Josh. Thanks for supporting us at that level. Josh says, hopefully Starliner will finally go on June 1st. Fingers crossed. Well, we will be getting an update from mission leaders from NASA, Boeing, and presumably ULA as well. That's coming up in a teleconference, which is currently set for 11 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. So look for updates and more details to be fleshed out during that uh, teleconference, is how it's currently being billed. Of course, as NASA has noted, June 1st is the earliest possible launch date now for the Starliner spacecraft. It has backup opportunities on June 2nd, Wednesday, June 5th, and Thursday, June 6th, if the first doesn't look like it's going to pan out. I also want to thank Artemis for jumping in with some more generosity, gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships and then coming back to gift another 20. Wait, Artemis, you are in a very generous mood tonight, and we very much appreciate it. And to our 30 newest channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Artemis in the live chat if you haven't already, and we hope you stick around. I also want to thank Jackie Q for $20 super chat and Sean as well for $20 super chat. Sean says, and then Sean joining us and watching in from Cocoa Beach. Hopefully you're getting some lovely weather down there in Cocoa Beach as well. Good position to watch this Southern Trajectory launch tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about trajectory in just a moment here. As I mentioned a little while ago, as we are now at T minus 36 minutes, 54 seconds and counting, a little less than 2 minutes away from the start of prop load, if SpaceX is in position to do so. This is not the only Falcon 9 rocket that SpaceX is preparing to launch from the Space Coast in the next day. Taking a look at a time-lapse video captured from pad 39A here at KSC. Just across the water from the press site here, you can see the transport erector, that strong back, rolling on back into the hangar there at the pad. Getting ready to pick up its Falcon 9 rocket. Return out to the launch pad there in support of the Starlink 6-63 mission, which is set to lift off again tomorrow night. It has a launch window that opens up at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, 22:45 UTC. Of course, we're keeping an eye out at the pad tonight to see if there's any more activity and if the transporter erector rolls back out with the rocket in tow. This wasn't the only bit of SpaceX activity that we noted here in Florida today, as SpaceX was also transporting one of its Dragon spacecraft. Go ahead and cue. In this video you see here, you can see the little white triangle that's moving among the tree line there, currently just to the bottom left of the Starship Tower there. That is a Dragon going off to Dragonland to be mated with its trunk and fueled in support of what we believe will be the Polaris Dawn mission. The booster behind it is not connected to that mission. It's going off to another destination to support another flight. But a busy activity day for SpaceX. Of course, that Crew Dragon spacecraft named Resilience has undergone quite a number of upgrades in order to support the Polaris Dawn mission, which will feature the first all non-governmental spacewalk. SpaceX debuted the EVA suits that all four of the astronauts on the Polaris Dawn mission will be sporting. Fairly similar to their IVA suits, but obviously feature a number of upgrades and additional capabilities to support crew safety for that EVA. We're now T minus 33 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. We do have confirmation from SpaceX that propellant load is in fact underway on the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. And as they say, all systems are currently go, winds are calm, and quote, clouds are keeping a respectable distance. So fairly good descriptor for sounds like fairly ideal launch conditions tonight, coming up in now just a hair under 33 minutes. As one of our moderators and channel members, Callisti Lee, noted in the live chat here, this is a southern trajectory mission tonight. So let's go ahead and talk a little trajectory and show you exactly what that means once the Falcon 9 rocket leaves the pad. Of course, it's going to be lifting off from Slick 40 or Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It's going to be flying in a southerly trajectory, as I mentioned, heading just to the east of the Bahamas there, with the first stage booster separating and touching down on one of SpaceX's three drone ships. Tonight, the one on deck is a short fall of gravitas. It's been hard at work since its partner over here on the East Coast, just read the instructions, has been getting a little R&R work done in the Bahamas. Should be back in action tomorrow night supporting the Starlink 6-63 mission. But for now, ASOG is going to be attempting its 71st booster landing to date. This will be SpaceX's 311th in total. A little bit beyond the map you see here on the screen, SpaceX will also endeavor to recover the two fairing halves supporting the Starlink satellites, or encapsulating them, I should say. After fairing separation, they fall and glide down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean in this case, obviously the Pacific Ocean for Vandenberg launches, but they're supported by a parachute system. SpaceX saves about $6 million per recovery effort. This is what it looks like as they bring those fairing halves on board one of the recovery vessels. We're now T minus 30 minutes, 12 seconds in counting. Start to see a little vapor forming near the base of the Falcon 9 first stage. As that super cold densified liquid oxygen is added into the first stage tank. Again, they'll start second stage LOX load at about T minus 16 minutes. The fact that SpaceX has begun fueling, though, does commit them to that T0 liftoff time, or making a run at it at least. So while the window does extend out to 2:31 a.m., because fueling has started and because of SpaceX's load and go process for fueling and launching, they're committed now to making a launch attempt, at least trying to, 29 minutes and 20 seconds. At this point in time, SpaceX is also loading cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on board the Falcon 9 first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. The same process will begin in about T minus 25 minutes on board the storage tanks of the second stage. We're now T minus 24 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. So far, the fueling of this Falcon 9 seems to be moving along nominally. Want to thank the more than 6,200 of you that are joining with us live tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, allow some more folks to find their way in as we continue on in the final 24 minutes of the count now. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank a few more folks for your support this evening. Our thanks to channel member Nancy Yarbrough for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Nancy. Our thanks also to Paz Maria H, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $2 super chat saying, "Hi, Will, Spaceflight, best channel for rocket launches." Thank you so much, Paz. Robert Casper with a $2 super chat as well, saying thank you for your awesome coverage. Really appreciate that, Robert. Artemis coming back in with some more generosity, another 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really, really appreciate that, Artemis. Thank you so much for that generosity tonight. Mermaid Labs with a $5 super chat, another one of our channel members. Thank you, Mermaid, saying this will be my last Florida launch until August. Let's do this. Sorry, this is going to be your last one for a while, but it sounds like you'll be back before too much longer. And of course, August will be when we're expecting the launch of SpaceX's Crew 9 flight to the International Space Station. So August is certainly a good time to be back, and hopefully you'll be back in time to catch that mission. Also want to welcome two new channel members, Catherine Payne, Jan P. Olson, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Ash Rock has been a member for 2 months, saying, "So happy to be watching another launch with everyone here. Can wait for Starliner to finally launch next week." Fingers crossed. Yes, we will wait and see what the further analysis yields and the updates during the teleconference on Friday. Of course, we'll bring you all those details as they come about. Be sure to look for our weekly roundup of not only that, but other news stories on the Space Beat coming to you Friday evening in our weekly News from the Press site show. Also want to thank Artemis for gifting another 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, and Callisti Least, I'll echo her sentiment of saying, don't forget to hit that like button. It's a free and easy way to show support and helps others find this live stream easier. And thanks for gifting a $20 super chat, Callistia, and saying that. We're now T minus 21 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. We are just about a minute away from the start of the so-called big vent as they're preparing to chill the feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. Thanks as well to Floro7 for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, Floro. It says, former U.S. submarine sailor here. Just noting that 3 former U.S. submariners have become U.S. astronauts, which is a very cool bit of trivia. I don't recall all of them off the top of my head, though I believe if I remember correctly, Caleb Barron, who was part of the Crew 3 mission, is one of those submariners. Sound off in the live chat if you happen to know the other two. Now T minus 20 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. See the big vent is now in swing. Good sign that fueling is on track for this Falcon 9 flight tonight. Now T minus 16 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. Just about 15 seconds left to go on the big vent as it's starting to taper off here. Preparation for the start of second stage LOX load. Tip of the hat to our friend Bill Harwood over at CBS News for reminding me that Steve Bowen was one of those submariners and confirming that my memory is correct, that Kayla Barron of the Crew 3 mission fame was in fact one of them. Taking a look at the live chat to see if someone has jumped in with the third. I see channel member S. Lee Washington mentioning Jasmine McBelly. Was she a submariner? I'll have to look that up. Double check that one. Yeah, I don't believe so. With the big event now wrapped up, or T minus 15 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. About a minute into second stage LOX load here on the Falcon 9 rocket. This particular booster, tail number 1080, is going for its eighth flight tonight, fairly young in the SpaceX fleet. While we've got some time, let's go over and talk about its brief but impactful booster history as it prepares for its eighth mission tonight. Its first flight started off on a notable front back on May 21st, 2023, almost exactly a year ago. It's the launch of the Axiom 2 private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. This flight was commanded by current Axiom space astronaut and former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. She was joined by fellow American John Schaffner in the pilot seat and two mission specialists from Saudi Arabia. The next booster flight came on July 1st, 2023, when it launched the European Space Agency's Euclid Observatory. This wide-angle space telescope is designed to better understand things like dark matter and dark energy. And as luck would have it, actually, tomorrow morning, ESA is going to be giving a presentation on some of the science that's been gathered during a live stream, talking about the successes seen from Euclid to date. Flights 3 and 4 for 1080 were a pair of Starlink missions. Those were Starlink 6-11 on August 27th and 6-24 on October 22nd. Fifth flight was another Crew Dragon mission. This time it sent up the Dragon named Freedom, supporting the AX-3 mission. Former NASA astronaut Michael Lopez Alegria, now also an employee of Axiom Space, was the commander of this mission, which lifted off on January 18th, 2024. One other interesting point of note on the AX-3 mission, I was on that flight that Mike LA became the first person to fly twice on board a Dragon capsule. The next person to join that club is likely going to be businessman Jared Isaacman once he commands the Polaris Dawn mission, which is set to launch early this summer. Launch number 6, as you see on your screen, is Another Dragon flight, the first cargo mission for this booster, CRS-30, of course, notable when it launched on March 21st, marking the first time that a second generation Dragon spacecraft launched to orbit off of Pad 40, now that it has that crew access tower supporting it. And most recently, of course, this booster launched the Starlink 6-52 mission back on April 18th. We're now T minus 11 minutes, 22 seconds and counting. This was a fairly young booster, but of course, it is joined by the elders leading the way as SpaceX is preparing to certify its boosters for up to 40 flights. Our own Adam Bernstein was up at Port Canaveral early this week as we saw the flight leader come back into town. You see there on your screen, that is booster 1062, which currently has 21 flights underneath its proverbial belt. Again, SpaceX is working to certify both its boosters and its payload fairings for up to 40 flights. 21 is the current flight leader on the booster side. It's unclear how many flights the payload fairings have undertaken. SpaceX does not regularly provide updates on that. We're now T minus 10 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. Talked about the legacy of these boosters and the work that SpaceX is doing to refurbish them and push them towards increasing flight reusability. Let's go ahead and talk a little more of an overview sense about the Falcon 9 vehicle itself. The rocket stands 70 meters or 229 feet tall and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9 first stage, the bottom of the vehicle. Again, this rocket here has flown 7 times before, going for its 8th tonight. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs, which will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. The top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. The first stage main engine cutoff, high pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until, of course, stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage, the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. After satellite deployment, it will ignite a third time as a deorbit burn, and that's to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up to help eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, up at the top are the payload fairings that encapsulate the 23 Starlink satellites. These fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and they're 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 fairing halves will be recovered by one of SpaceX's 2 vessels named Bob and Doug here. They'll be using, I believe Doug is on tap tonight. And as previously shown, they splash down underneath parachutes. They'll be brought back into Port Canaveral along with the booster. They'll be brought over to Cape Canaveral, refurbished, and turned around for future flights. We are now T minus 7 minutes and counting. At this point, SpaceX is getting the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines underway. Again, that involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. Now T minus 6 minutes and counting. Couple big milestones for the Starlink program as we're heading into this launch tonight, the first of 2 Starlink flights set for this week. First, at the start of the week, SpaceX announced that it had crossed 3 million paid subscribers for the Starlink internet service. Notable milestone, certainly in its own right. Also, SpaceX announced that it had brought access now to a new country, this being the Republic of Fiji. This photo shared by SpaceX founder Elon Musk. You see there standing in the middle, just to the left of the Starlink terminal there on the table, the president of Fiji there on the right with the flag pin and a little orange lapel pin just beneath that. The Republic of Fiji is the 99th country, territory, or market, according to SpaceX, where the Starlink service is now available. We're now T minus 4 minutes, 20 seconds away from the liftoff of the Falcon rocket. We're now getting some mission audio from SpaceX, and that call out you just heard is the start of the strong back retract sequence getting underway. Again, I'll start with the payload fairings underneath the Falcon 9 rocket opening up. Then the transporter erector. Strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the vehicle. You can see those clamp arms underneath the fairings opening up there from the SpaceX perspective. On board the Falcon 9 rocket are 23 Starlink satellites. Go to a view of what those look like here. You can see them in a launch configuration from a previous Starlink launch. This will be the, as I mentioned, the 37th dedicated Starlink flight of the year. Each of them clocking in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, as opposed to the previously used Krypton Hall thrusters. They were built in Redmond, Washington. They'll be deployed at about 200 miles or 320 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. We're now under 3 minutes from the flight of this particular Starlink mission. Again, the first of 2 set for this week, with the Starlink 6-63 mission coming up tomorrow. With that call out, we just have one more fueling milestone left, stage 2 LOX load. I want to thank the more than 27,000 of you who are joining with us tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button. It allows more folks to find their way in to this live coverage. We're just minutes away from the launch of this Falcon 9 flight.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
With that call out, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts, one of the final steps before SpaceX is prepared to launch its Falcon 9 rocket.
Ground gas closeouts.
Now just about a minute to go before liftoff. I see a number of your comments in the live chat. We'll promise we'll come back to those on the other side of liftoff, but for now, let's go ahead and focus in.
Falcon
So we're
9 is in startup.
expecting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for liftoff coming up in the next several seconds.
Go for launch.
And with that go for launch, we are now less than 30 seconds away from the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-62 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And a beautiful ascent of the Falcon 9 rocket, now a little more than 30 seconds into flight. This view for our friend Chuck Briggs. From our own Adam Bernstein here at the press site. This view from Pete Carson's with Max Q Productions as we cruising on the first minute of launch, coming up on Max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Vehicles passed through Max Q, coming upon a number of events in fairly rapid succession. First will be first stage managed cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That'll be followed a few seconds later by stage separation, and then second stage engine start, 2:40. That'll be followed by fairing deployment at T plus 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Right now, a little more than 2 minutes into flight, they're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine, preparing for its ignition. Coming up now in less than 30 seconds. Fairly clear skies and great tracking views as we're coming up on MECO right now. Stage separation. And SCS-1. Second stage engine start. And there you see stage separation from the Falcon 9's onboard cameras. Obviously getting a lot more views tonight than we did this morning for the NROL 146 mission, as that was a classified payload for the National Reconnaissance Office. See the hypersonic grid fins deploying on the Falcon 9 onboard cameras as you see the payload fairings deploy in our live tracking feed from Pete Karstens. And there go the fairings in the SpaceX feed. The Starlink satellites heading up to low Earth orbit. Now, a little more than 3.5 minutes into flight. Next milestone we're anticipating is the first stage entry burn beginning. The burn lasting about 22 seconds in total. Will begin to rapidly slow down the Falcon 9 first stage booster. So far, both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket appear to be flying nominally in this mission. So coming into the 5th minute of flight.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Good call out from SpaceX, affirming what we believe we were seeing a second ago, that both the Falcon 9 first and second stages are continuing to have a nominal flight. Coming upon the first stage entry burn in real time, it's now just about 10 seconds away. If cloud conditions allow for it, we may be able to capture that with our ground cameras here. If we are able to spot it, we'll be sure to bring that to you. And yes, indeed, Pete's got a great view of
Stage
that.
one
Well
entry
done,
burn
Pete.
startup.
Stage 1 FTSS saved.
And there you see the end of the entry burn in real time. The start of it, though, on the SpaceX feed coming in at a slight delay, which is the reason for the time dissonance here.
Stage one entry burn shutdown.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, the next milestone we're anticipating is coming up at T plus 7 minutes and 50 seconds when the start of the landing burn begins. Our friend Chuck Briggs, though, still has good eyes
Stage
on
2
the Falcon
FTSS
9's
saved.
second stage. Just heard that call out about
Both vehicles
stage 2.
continue to follow nominal trajectories.
That Merlin vacuum engine you see there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There's the on-camera views, the dot in the middle of the big box. That is Chuck's view from the ground. Now about less than 30 seconds from the start of the landing burn. Unfortunately, from our
Stage one
ground camera
transonic.
perspectives, the first stage is too low on the horizon for us to be able to capture that landing burn. So we will rely on the Falcon 9's onboard cameras to bring you those views. That landing burn beginning in real time, coming up on the views from the SpaceX feed in about 5 or so seconds.
Stage one landing burn.
These from the drone ship of Shortfall Gravitas should be coming up
Stage 2,
momentarily.
terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good confirmation of the landing of booster 1080 on the drone ship Shortfall Gravitas.
Seco.
With that call for Seco, second stage engine cutoff. The upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket is going to a parking orbit where it will coast until about T plus 54 minutes and 3 seconds, leading up to a brief 2 second burn, sending it for the Starlink satellites to be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 12 seconds. We very much appreciate everyone who's been supporting us through this live launch coverage. So, as promised, let me hop on back to the live chat here and give some folks their due for helping support our coverage tonight. I want to thank Rocket Profit for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate that, Rocket Profit. Saying YouTube mods are the best mods, and I would certainly agree. We have, in my unbiased opinion, the best mods in town. So thanks to all of our wonderful moderators, Callistia Lee, Stephanie B, Astro Jen, Astro Joe, and Rusty Shackelford. I did see Michael Kane popping in there as a moderator as well. Kudos to Michael for helping us out in that capacity tonight. I also want to thank Catherine Payne for support as a channel member for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Catherine. Christopher Brummett with a $7.70 Canadian dollar super chat. Thank you, Christopher, saying it's a good night to yeet some rockets or send them up into low Earth orbit. Go Falcon 9, noting that my dad uses Starlink also. So thanks for continuing to make his internet better and better. I thank Catherine for another $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Catherine. And hopefully your question got answered by someone in the live chat that you were talking about there. Galaxy Games, welcome aboard as a channel member at the pad leader level. Also, welcome to FG, both joining at the pad leader level. Thanks to Kevin Johnson for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin. And Charles Boyer, really appreciate seeing you tonight, Charles. Hope you're doing well. Our thanks to Nelson Reyes for very generous $10, or excuse me, gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Nelson, and good to see you tonight as well. Dan Evans with a $5 super chat, checking in from Wake Forest, North Carolina, saying always enjoy your coverage. Well, thank you, Dan. Really appreciate you supporting our coverage tonight. I want to thank McGee for being a channel member for 2 months. Really appreciate that. Sending a little heart emoji there. Jim Edgar, the very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Jim. Good to see you tonight. Jim saying Lisa Bean and Jim watching from, oh, I know you've told me how to pronounce this before, Jim. So apologies for not remembering the correct pronunciation of that town in Washington, but appreciate you checking in with us. And Jim saying, go Falcon 9, go Starlink. And Artemis closing us out with a very generous $50 super chat, capping off a very generous night from Artemis tonight. So thank you so much for supporting us at that level. Really, really appreciate that. And with that, we'll go ahead and close things out, as we always do, with a look at the mission stats as they currently stand, now that we've had a successful liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This was the 8th flight of the aforementioned booster, 1080 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 338th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 53rd Falcon 9 launch of 2024, the 281st Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 54th launch of 2024, including the third integrated flight test of their Starship rocket, looking to launch the fourth one potentially as soon as June 1st. We're going to keep our eyes very closely on Southern Texas and the FAA for clearance for that fourth flight. This was SpaceX's 115th orbital launch within the last 365 days. This was also their 187th orbital launch from Pad 40 here at the Cape, and the 242nd overall orbital launch from this particular pad. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 71st landing of a booster on the drone ship, a shortfall Gravitas. This is also the 243rd drone ship landing and the 311th overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Taking a look at the pie chart as it currently stands for SpaceX and their Falcon flights. Here's where we stand right now. Of course, we'll be adding a Falcon Heavy to that tally at the end of June, the launch of the GOES-U spacecraft on behalf of NOAA and NASA, set to launch on June 25th. Finally, some mission stats from around the world. This was the 38th orbital launch from Florida, the 56th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 60th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company. Looking at Rocket Lab's next launch coming up on Saturday, the 25th, sending up NASA's pre-fire spacecraft. An Earth-observing satellite. We'll have an article on that going up tomorrow on the website, spaceflightnow.com, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. And this was also the 97th orbital launch globally. Partial mishap and a complete mishap added to that total. Here's where the pie chart stands. U.S. continues to hold a little more than 60% of the pie. China, 24 launches, representing 24% of the missions this year. Russia in the third spot with 7, Japan with 3, Iran and India with 2 apiece. And again, as we are a little more than 16 minutes into this flight, we are looking at our next Falcon 9 mission lifting off from the Cape. You're not going to have too long to wait, folks. It's coming up potentially tomorrow is what we're tracking right now. Starlink 6-63 with a window that opens up at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, 22:45 UTC. Showed you that video of the transporter erector rolled back into the hangar. Taking a live look now at Pad 39A, where that rocket will launch tomorrow night. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Spaceflight Now on your way out the virtual door here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you back here for our live coverage tomorrow. And that'll do it for as we've had a whole slew of new channel members join our flock, thanks to some generous gifting and some folks joining of their own accord. Want to note again the perks of channel membership, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. You can find that discount code in the community section here on YouTube. If you're looking forward to some future crewed missions, we do have the Starliner CFT crew flight patch available for purchase in our shop right now, as well as the forthcoming Crew 9 mission, launching on board a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket and a Crew Dragon spacecraft, lifting off in the August timeframe. Both those patches in the shop right now, if you'd like to go ahead and snag some of those. And want to thank Mitchell Wilbur for not only being a channel member, but for a very generous $20 super chat coming in right at the buzzer here, saying thanks for keeping everyone on point. Good job as usual. Really appreciate your support tonight, Mitchell. And to Ozone for a dollar super chat as well. And with all that, want to thank our wonderful moderators for helping us out tonight. So thanks to Callistia Lee, again, Stephanie B, Astro Jen, Astro Joe, Rusty Shackelford, and Michael Kane for popping in as a moderator tonight. Our thanks to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs as well for helping to provide tracking views of the Falcon 9 rocket. I mentioned Adam, also Michael. Really appreciate the support and the work from the two of you as well. You can find all of their photography on their social channels. They're both on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find Adam Bernstein at Apern NYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. Also want to thank our editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the show. And most importantly, I want to thank you for wherever you're joining with us tonight. And again, we hope you join us back here tomorrow for our next live launch coverage, Starlink 6-63. For all of us here at Spaceflight now, I want to thank you one last time. And again, we want to remind you to be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time. Good night.